afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another Black Male Impact. My name is Richard A. Cross, and we have with us today Dr. Mathew Knowles. I'm just going to share a little bit about Dr. Knowles, and then I'll ask him to share before we get into the conversation. Dr. Knowles, thanks for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, sir. All right. Dr. Knowles is an author, professor, lecturer, motivational speaker, music executive, artist manager, entrepreneur, fighter, and cancer survivor would be the words used to sum up the life and career of Dr. Mathew Knowles. He currently holds a professorship at Pepperdine University, London College of Creative Media, Point Blank Music School, and is the Dean of Black Music Industry Certification Program at the Distinguished National Museum of African American Music. And I will have to say, he's the legend behind his daughter. It's just great to have you here with us, Dr. Knowles. I know you have done great work for Beyonce. Everybody love her around the world. And we just glad that we have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Before we get into the conversation, though, please share anything you want to share before we start this conversation.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Richard. I must say I'm always humbled when I hear someone tell my background, because I'm not that kind of person that's love to be behind the scenes. But I also just want to add how proud I am also. Solange being now the first Black woman ever to conduct in New York City a ballet, the New York City Ballet. That's a major, major accomplishment that has to be heard. And also Grammy winner, #1 albums. So we often talk about Beyonce, but we have a Venus also part of our team, and that would be Solange.
Yes. Yes, sir. Okay. So I know you have done great work over the years and have made great impact. So my first question to you is, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
Well, the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact starts within. I think each of us, and I'll speak for myself, we all, or I do, we have a part of ourselves that sometimes have to be managed. There's a chaotic part of self. And I learned that years ago, that there is a chaotic part of self. And how do I manage that chaotic part of myself? I chose therapy.
Okay.
I have had a Black male therapist for years. So it starts there. It starts within yourself, because that's the only way you can help others is when you've helped yourself first. It's kind of like when you're on an airplane and they say we have turbulence. When the mask comes down, put it on your face first, and then your child.
Yeah.
That's the example of what I mean. We first have to let the mask drop, and we put it on our face and make an inward a better person.
Okay, so self-development is first when we are thinking about making a positive impact. And I think that is important. A lot of times we may not focus a lot on ourselves when we are thinking about making an impact. We try to go out there and do the work. But as you said, we need to work on ourselves first. And I think that is important. So I really appreciate that advice. And I know the listeners appreciate it too. So my next question to you, Dr. Knowles, what advice do you have for the men listening on how they can play a role in creating positive change?
We need positive change. And as Black men, we have to take a greater leadership role. So we can talk about leadership and what that means. But for me, it starts with knowledge.
Okay.
Notice I didn't say education. Because, and I'm an educator. I've taught 18 years, and I share with my fellow professors that there's a difference between education and knowledge. Everyone is not the person that should or needs to go to college. But we need to get knowledge, even if it's learning how to be an electrician or learning how to be a plumber. We need to get knowledge because that's where it all starts. When you find someone who's lacking in knowledge, and education is critical, but if you can get both, that life experience called knowledge,
Yeah.
then you can be a better person and you can impact. Because if you had a spike of a wheel, right in the center was knowledge. These are the things that happen when you have lack of knowledge: poor housing, poor education, poor job, the whole institution, our police system takes advantage of. Those are some of the things: poor eating habits, bad health and wellness because of this lack of knowledge and education. So for me, it starts there. Education, yet even the next step is getting knowledge.
Yes. And just listening to you really gave me a deeper understanding or somewhat a perspective on knowledge. It's, as you're saying, when we don't know, we do the things that harm us. So it's not the education itself, but knowing the things that we need to know so we can do the things that can advance us, that can help us to make a greater impact. So, and being that some of us grow up in a community or broken homes and stuff like that, so that's where the knowledge, we may miss out on some of the important things for us to know, so we can take on the education piece that can help us.
Cut off for a second here.
Yes, to advance.
Could you re-ask that, please?
Yes, no, I was just saying, just from what you said in regards to knowledge, I realized that sometimes from a broken home, I think that we don't get some of those knowledge that we need in order to advance, the basic things.
Well, I think there's many ways of gathering knowledge. One is finding a mentor,
Okay.
finding someone that you can simply be humble and say, hey, I need your help. Can you share with me? You seem to be one of the best at what you do. Could you take me under your wings? Can you help me? It's as simple as that. Often we are afraid to ask for help. So that's one way. The other way is I teach entrepreneurship, right, at a lot of universities. And we go over marketing and sales and the creative process and all of the aspects. But until you've actually ran a business and had the experience and hands-on, then you begin to get knowledge. That's an example that I use all the time. And I use that pretty often, that experience of what knowledge really is.
Oh, wow. So it comes from the experience applying what you know, and that gives you the knowledge. And that's really profound and gives you a deeper understanding and great perspective when it comes to or between knowledge and education. So I'm going to go into my next question. How can we, and it ties close to what you just shared, how can we as Black men help to change the narrative today?
Well, there's a narrative that, first of all, needs to change. I'm very proud of our sisters, our Black sisters, because they've stepped up. They've stepped up in the voting poll. They've stepped up in health and wellness.
Yes.
They've stepped up. And these are the areas as Black men we need to step up. This is a defining moment in our society. And we look at the percentage of Black men that vote, it's much greater, much lesser number than our Black sisters.
Yes.
When we look at health and wellness, Black men lead in mortality all other major categories except suicide and breast cancer.
Wow.
So when we look at health and wellness, we're far behind. When we look at leadership and understanding leadership, and leadership, we often think leadership means I have a bunch of people that report to me. Leadership can be just in your home, with your kids. Leadership and understanding leadership and what that really means. So I think those are some of the roles as Black men And I give you an example. I know my wife would probably say, why did you say that? So yesterday, my wife and I, we walked for 2 miles. Well, my wife is a little younger and she's in a better shape than I am. And I'm proud to say that at 70, I can walk 2 miles every other day.
That's right.
But my wife walks faster. And so I said to her, honey, culturally, and we looked at it. There was an Asian couple, the woman walked behind him. There was an Indian couple, the woman walked behind him. So we've lost, even in African culture, the woman walks behind him. We've lost some of our culture also. So I said, you can do one or two things. Just go ahead and take off, but please don't walk in front of me, because the culture of a Black man is, I need to show that I am your man. And sometimes we just have to have that conversation.
You're right. I do see the sisters do step up. I do see they're taking the lead. They are showing that they really mean business. And also what you just said, sometimes they may want to go ahead and show their dominance. And I think that has been a conversation at times within our community. But as men, as you mentioned, we do need to step up in those areas, from leadership, from family and relationships, so we can actually start to show that dominance or take back our position in society. So I think that is really interesting and also important that you share that in regards to changing the narrative. My next question is more of a personal question, is what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
Well, that's a very good question. I grew up on a dirt road in Gaston, Alabama. We had an outhouse. We didn't have plumbing or a bathroom until I was around 14 years old.
Wow.
My dad was a truck driver. He made $30 a week as a produce truck driver. My mom made $15 a week as a colored maid, $3 a day as a colored maid. What they both did, which was entrepreneurial, they convinced the white company that my dad worked for, could he keep the truck 24/7, and he would go and tear down houses, and he would sell the coppers and the metals, and he would sell the wood and the windows. My mom convinced a white woman that she worked with and for, could she have any hand-me-down clothes? Not only did she convince the woman she worked for, she asked her to ask all of her friends. So on the weekend, my mother and two of her best girlfriends made these beautiful quilts that they sold. The message that I got from that is my parents made 20-fold by using the assets that they were given and converting that into revenue and generating revenue. We were poor, and had it not been for that thinking outside of the box ingenuity that our parents, and I always remember that. My grandfather, Dave Holt, also my inspiration, had 300 acres of land in Marion, Alabama.
Wow.
He convinced he would sell 100 acres to the nearest paper mill. He would not sell it, that's incorrect. He would lease 100 acres of land to the nearest paper mill. They would come, cut down all the trees, because that's how they make paper, all the brush. They would cut it all down. And then my grandfather would go behind him and he would then plant. Wow. He was a farmer. He would go behind him. I thought my grandfather had these people pay to remove all the trees so he could then farm. Wow, they paid him. That was brilliant. So I had those types of, my family is third generation entrepreneur. And so I got to see that on my mother's side, my dad's side, these creative Black people in the South, in Alabama, who were entrepreneurs.
That's great inspiration right there, especially from your grandfather. And that was brilliant. Have them to do the work for him. And then he go back and plan. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. He reaped the benefit twice. He sold
Yes.
them what was there, and then they take care of the land so he could do the farming. Man, that was smart. You can just imagine what he would be doing today.
Right.
with so much change and more opportunities and resources and stuff like that. But as you said, you come from you're the third generation of entrepreneurs. And this wasn't a question that I was going to ask, but being that you said that, in regards to entrepreneur and us as Black people, being that they say we spend so much, how can we get more of our people to realize or see the value of being an entrepreneur?
So I apologize, it's freezing up occasionally. So can you repeat that question?
Yes. So what I'm saying is, how can we as Black people really see the value of entrepreneurship? And not only see the value, because I know you teach entrepreneurship, so there are some things that we may need to know so we can be successful.
Well, it starts with the who, the what, the why. Some people even add the where. Who is our customer? What is the product? And why should they buy it? And in some situations, where do they get the product? The distribution part of it. And that's the creative process that you have to start with. And then building out the team. And who's the team? You know, manager, you got to have an attorney for contracts. You got to have a banking relationship or investing relationship. The number one place where Black entrepreneurs fail is because access to capital.
Okay.
That's where most Black businesses fail. I've owned the music world, my company now, for 34 years. Proud of that. We had House of Darion clothing line that we knew nothing about clothing line. We started at zero, sold it for $75 million. I have to remind people, in 1981, Beyonce was born. In 1986, my former wife and I made our first $1 million in our hair salon in Houston. So entrepreneurship, my daughters grew up in, and they're great entrepreneurs now. Now they're fourth generation entrepreneurs. And proud of that mentorship and leaving that legacy of entrepreneurship. There's another word I want to share with your audience.
Yeah.
That's intrapreneur, a word very seldom used in the Black community. Intrapreneurship. And that's when you run an organization, you work at a company, you might be a sales rep and you have a territory, or you might be a manager and you have 10 people report to you, or you might be a senior level manager, but you run it as if it's your company. No different than if it was your company. Your headset, your thought process is that you run it like it's your company. And that's called intrapreneurship, because everyone's not going to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
But between the two, we'll either be entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. And understanding the nuances of that. And understanding culture. That's the challenge that we're living in. We as Black people gave up. I always say the only people that integrated was Black people. White folks didn't integrate. We did. We went out in the suburbs and to the white schools and left our businesses. All the Black businesses that used to be in our community, they all left or went out of business. But understand Black culture. A lot, especially our younger Blacks and our Black men, aren't connected understanding the Black culture. Have you ever heard when a group of Black people get together and people say, man, they're loud?
Yeah.
Well, culturally, if you ever been to Nigeria, if you ever been to South Africa, that's who we are. We are loud, energy people when we talk, expressive, quite expressive. But if you don't understand the culture of Black people, why we do things a certain way, and we have to let our white counterparts understand that culturally we're different. How we go about approaching a problem as a Black man is different than how a white man would go about solving a problem. And you get me on a tangent here.
Well, I'm here listening because there are certain things that I need to learn myself, especially within the Black culture. Growing up in Jamaica, there are certain things coming here in the States that I'm still not aware of, but I'm taking my time to learn more about the culture itself. Because although I grew up in Jamaica, some of the same problems we have it there in Jamaica that is here when it comes to us as Black people. A lot of us in Jamaica, if we grow up in poverty, we tend to stay within that space and don't expand, even though the opportunities may be there. But because we don't realize we can learn from others, get a mentor to learn from, or just be driven, have the ambition. So I'm here to learn, but as you mentioned, the culture, because a lot of time when we group together, that's what people say. Oh, they're loud and stuff like that because they don't understand who we are. So I know that is important to the listeners because we do sometimes move away from our culture or not even understanding it ourselves. My next question, and most of these questions are tied close to each other. What is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society? I know you said the females have stepped up. I know you said they are doing their work. But from your perspective, what are the climate of Black men in America or in a society today?
Well, I think, again, going from cultural intelligence, I a couple of years ago attended Harvard cultural intelligence class, learned a whole lot. We Black men particularly, we're feared by other races. Black men are simply that. We walk inside of a store and women are frightened. We express our opinion at work to another white man and we're arrogant. We have to understand that we have to be better than our counterparts. We have to be smarter. We have to also learn to keep our cool. When we're in a discussion, as Black men, we often get very extremely emotional, and we have to learn how to curtail and contain that emotion. And because society is just waiting for us to make a mistake. I live in a very comfortable life. I'm very grateful for the lifestyle that me and my wife and family have. But when I go outside of this house, I'm just another Black man. When I go driving in my car and if I get stopped, I'm just another Black man. And that's what we have to understand, that the cards are stacked against us. So that's why we have to get more knowledge. That's why we have to get more experience. That's why we have to be the very best. Is it fair? Life is not fair. I discourage people from using the word fair. It's reality that as Black men and as a Black man, I have a whole different set of circumstances that I have to deal with than my Black sister. And certainly my white male counterpart, totally different set of circumstances. I can't go to a corporate function and have a good time because then he got drunk. See, my white counterpart can do the exact same behavior and he let his hair down. Wasn't that great? He let his hair down. So we always have a different set of circumstances. And we need to unify as Black men. We need to have more of what you're doing. And there needs to be more unification. We need to reach back to our young men that's growing up today. They have even a different set of circumstances. Because most of us grew up in an all Black environment. Kids today are growing up in a very harmonious mixed environment. So they don't know our culture. We've even lost a lot of knowledge of our culture. We forget. My great-grandfather was a slave. So it's only 4 or 5 generations away slave. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you understand that you've got to really be good at what you do. You've got to be the best at it. I don't even want to use the word good. I don't use the word good. You've got to be great. And there's greatness inside of each and every one of us. We have to put in the work, get the information. Look, there's a professor right now with us called Professor Google. You can now Google, you don't have to spell it right. You you can write it in a sentence form. Hey, what happens when my customer doesn't come back? You can write that in, and it'll actually give you feedback. And we don't use that tool enough. We're in a digital information tool. There's information out there and getting facts. Don't get into arguments about things without having the facts. And most people don't have the information. We need, as Black men, to gather the information, gather our composure, and then be able to contribute to society in a meaningful way. And celebrate our Black women, celebrate them.
There's a whole lot to unpack from what you just said, from us keeping our cool and striving to be the best that we can be. Because as you said, the card is already stacked against us. And that's something that I even have to train myself, because you're in some environment and people may say things that rub you the wrong way. And just, you can't, as you mentioned, we can't respond like how everybody else respond. We have to be mindful of how we are responding, because they're going to judge us, or they're already judging us already. So I think that is really important, that we control our emotions and always strive to be the best that we can be. And that cannot be stressed enough, because we already know that society put us in a group already, and maybe have labels and stigmas stuck against us. So, and that is really important. And I appreciate that perspective, because it's important that we keep cool and learn as much as we can. So
well, the thing is that you cannot make a good decision when you're angry. When you allow anger to come inside of your decision making, you will always, or most of the time, make a poor decision. That's why it's so important that you make a decision based on facts, take your emotions out of it, and make a good decision. Now, often with my negotiations, because I feel I'm seasoned at it, my attempt will be to get you angry.
Okay.
Because I know if I do, then I have a upper edge, because you're not going to make a good decision.
That's where the knowledge comes in. Again, back to what you said in the beginning, that's where knowledge comes in over the experiences that you have over the years, give you that advantage. I know you have shared the question I'm about to ask. You have shared some great points from your grandfather and your parents, but I'm still going to ask this question. What was a pivotal moment in your life?
Pivotal moment for me was 8th grade, Litchfield Junior High School. I'm 70 years old, grew up in Gaston, Alabama. I never went to a Black school. Think about that. Born in 1952.
Wow.
In Gaston, Alabama. Not only did I never go to a Black elementary, junior high, and high school, I also integrated, me and about 40 other students, the University of Tennessee. Then I went to my first Black school. I transferred in my junior year. But the defining moment was my first day at Litchfield Junior High School. And I was the only Black. It was 6 Blacks and 1,000 white kids. And I went to my English class, only Black, 40 plus white kids. The teacher immediately called me out and had me read Shakespeare, which is quite difficult to read. And I had never experienced that pressure of reading Shakespeare, nor had I ever read Shakespeare. So I stumbled a lot, and the whole class of white kids started throwing air balls and airplanes and spitballs and laughing at me. There was this little young white girl sitting next to me that had a look of compassion while all of these kids are making fun of me. And for a second, I smiled at her, thinking she had compassion. And then she looked at me and she said, "You conehead, N-word, stupid."
Wow.
And that was a defining moment that I said I would never allow myself to be in that position again.
Wow.
That I will always work to be better.
Man,
that was a real defining moment for me. I can't say a lot more about that because we are negotiating the Mathew Knowles story.
Okay,
And
okay.
you'll get
Yes,
this
yes. And I read part of that. We're looking forward to it. Man, the comments were, man, there were so many comments. Ready to see that part of your life experience. So, yes, we don't want you to share too much because we want to see it in the taters and stuff like that. So, we're looking forward for that. But I want to ask this what life lesson have you learned late that you believe is important to this generation or younger generation?
Oh, that's a really good one also. The key life lesson, the moment that I heard the doctor say, Mr. Knowles, you have cancer.
Wow.
And so in that moment, and there's some people today might have heard those words or know a family member, you go numb. You think, am I gonna die? Is it gonna be a painful death? How long will it be that I live? And all sorts of things come to mind. It was a defining moment for me in a world of gratitude because now I live more in a world of gratitude than I ever lived before. And I made life changes. I look at the trees and I look at the ocean and I walk the beach and I look at birds and flowers, things that weren't important to me before. Exercise every other day. I don't eat meat anymore. I still need to lose 10 more pounds, and I will do it. All of those things have changed in my life since that moment I heard you have cancer. So that gratitude now in my life is at an all-time high of just the gratitude of life.
Yes. And also congratulations and on being a cancer survivor because we know how that is. So I know you, as you said, you have made some changes. So congratulations on overcoming that battle or challenge. Although they said in every challenge there's an opportunity because now you get an opportunity to share with us some of the things that we need to do different as we go on our journey from exercising to changing our diet and even to be grateful for life itself. So we really appreciate not just you surviving it, but the lessons that you will share with us. So that's really vital on this journey. So before I get to my last question, I want to ask you, where can the listeners find your work, support your work, and just to enjoy some of the things that you have to offer to us?
Yeah, well, thank you for that opportunity. You can simply go to MathewKnowles.com. Everything you need to find out, know about me. Right now, my mission is going out to help motivate and educate in the areas of entrepreneurship, music business, health and wellness, racism, diversity. So I'm a public speaker. I'm all over the world. I really passionately enjoy sharing my successes as well as my failures. That's my calling, and that's what I'm here. So if some of your listeners would like to consider booking me to speak, they can go to MathewKnowles.com and click Book Me to Speak. Also, my 5 books are there. The DNA of Achievers, Racism from the Eyes of a Child, The Emancipation of Slaves Through Music and PR in the Digital Age, and a Destiny's Child documentary story. So those books are there. You can find out general information about me, but the Book Me to Speak is the thing that I'm really, really focused on today.
Okay. And that's MathewKnowles.com. Listeners, Dr. Knowles have a wealth of knowledge. As you heard, he have over 35 years of being an entrepreneur, and not just being an entrepreneur. He has been really successful at being an entrepreneur. So there are a lot you can learn from Dr. Knowles. Again, his website is MathewKnowles.com. Am I correct?
That's right.
All right. So my final question to you, Dr. Knowles, what impact do you want to have on the world?
Well, I hope I've had some impacts on the world in many, many ways. So when you ask that question, my brain automatically goes, I've been given, and the gratitude again, being the top sales rep in the world at Xerox Medical Systems and being the first Black to sell MRI and CT scanners. So in the corporate life, being the best in the world. in the music industry, being the best Destiny Child, being a #1 female group, and having the opportunity to work with these young ladies. Beyonce now the #1 artist in the world. Solange's making steps that no Black woman has ever walked before. And sharing my vulnerability, because I understand that when I live my vulnerability lies my safety, and being vulnerable about my life and total honesty. So that's the impact that I hope that I am daily sharing with the world. What we're doing right now, I enjoy sharing. And I learn my own stuff. I'm not past the part of learning. I am always reading and learning and Googling, Professor Google, and I love and enjoy doing it. And so I think my light is not ready to be blown out yet. My candle is still wanting to glow and glow even brighter. So I hope in the film and TV that I'll be able to leave some impacts and a impact on the world simply by telling the Mathew Knowles story.
Yes, and I know you start off conversation with being humble, and I can attest to that because I just simply reach out to you, and sometimes that's how it is. Sometimes we get connected with people, but I really appreciate that humbleness for the success you have. Even some people ask me, man, how did you get to connect to Dr. Knowles? But I think just your humbleness, and which I really appreciate. You responded to my messages. It doesn't matter how many messages I send, and I greatly appreciate that. That is a testament to the type of person you are. And I appreciate it. I know the people around you appreciate it. So, Dr. Knowles, man, I do appreciate you sharing with us today on the Black Male Impact. Dr. Knowles, thank you.
Thank you. And there's a real message in what you just said. The fact that you didn't give up.
Yes.
You didn't give up. It wasn't the first time I responded or second time. You didn't give up. And in life, we just can't give up sometimes. And know that you will get some no's in life.
Yes.
And I'll leave you with this. I was going down an escalator in LAX years ago, and a nun from Mexico gave me a card. Took me months to read the card, and this is what I will leave you with. The card said, pray not for a life free from trouble. Pray for triumph over trouble. For what you and I call adversity, the universe, God, Allah, calls opportunity. See, what we call adversity in our lives are really opportunities. When I got cancer, it turned out to be an opportunity to become a better man, better husband. Who would ever guess there would be an opportunity in having cancer? So that's what I wanted to leave you with.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.